Hi, welcome to my testimony. My name is Kayla, and for those of you who know me, thank you for taking the time to click on this video, no matter what reason you clicked on it for. No matter why you're here, negative or positive, I appreciate you just taking the time to listen to my story. So, I just want to begin by saying this is not my full testimony. This does not cover my spiritual journey really at all. Just a little bit, but this is more so my testimony of how Yeshua, or in modern American Christianity terms, Jesus, radically reformed my entire identity, my appearance, honestly, every single facet of who I am. I believe that there is not a single human being on the face of planet Earth that can't take something away from the story I'm about to share or see a piece of themselves in the story, especially women. A few days ago, I had just posted a short reel on Instagram that showed a little bit of my journey and just kind of the radical transformation that God's done in my life since I was 16. Before I begin using the platform to really plow into those deeper truths of my spiritual journey, I think right now I just feel really called to share my testimony concerning my identity and save those parts of my story for another time. I'm going to begin by saying I don't identify with the religion of Christianity or with the modern presentation of the religion of Christianity displays, especially not American Christianity. I believe in the Bible as the Word of God, and I believe that Yeshua, HaMashiach, was the human manifestation of God, and in Christianity we refer to him and know him as Jesus. But personally, I like to refer to him by his Hebrew name, his real name. So it's not that I don't believe in what Christianity should have initially stood for, but what modern American Christianity, it's just not my belief system. And there's a lot of reasons for that I will go deeper into in later videos, but I just want to preface by stating that. And number two, I'm also not a part of the New Age. I was radically saved from the perversion of the supernatural and spirituality. I have not dismissed the supernatural part of my journey. In fact, it is the greatest gift I have and my opportunity to connect with, go deeper with the Holy Spirit every single day. And so I won't dismiss the spiritual. I'll just dismiss the improper uses of what was once ancient medicine and was stolen. So I want to just state kind of those two things right off the bat, so there was no confusion in those areas, because I do have a lot of questions on both sides because of my journey with yoga and meditation and then Christianity and going to church. I get a million questions all the time. Make one more disclaimer. As I share any pieces of my story, whether it be what I believe to be evidence of God, where I'm like speaking in the context of this is truth, because it is truth to me, I am still in no way, shape, or form attempting to impose my spiritual beliefs on you, the listener. I believe that we are all on a journey, and our journey is our greatest teacher. I would not have came to the conclusion of Yeshua being God today if it wasn't for all the loops and different twists and turns of my journey and all of the wrong turns in my journey. I'm just going to get into my testimony. So my whole life, I was always a little bit awkward. I was always a little bit weird. I never really felt like I fit in anywhere. I didn't always have my own friends growing up. It was always kind of like my little brother, and then I was placed in like friend groups with like the older sisters, and I was always kind of like the young one. And like even just growing up, remembering like hanging out with my cousins, like I was always like the young one, so I was always kind of like just the oddball out growing up. And I had some friends, so I wasn't like completely alone by any means, but I just always remember feeling like I never belonged. Like it's like when the friends like are walking on the street and you're kind of like hanging off of the sidewalk and they're like really deep in conversation and you don't really know where you fit in the conversation. And I just remember like growing up, like always calling my mom at sleepovers, asking her to pick me up. I just never felt like I belonged. And in my appearance, I was a little bit quirky as well. And I had crooked teeth. I had little tiny glasses like this. And then in middle school, you kind of hit puberty and I'm out of that awkwardness a little bit, but I still looked like, a middle schooler. I remember like just doing cheer and doing different sports. I was bad at every single sport, like literally bad at everything. I never made probably above a C in school. Some people place their identity in their grades and their education. I kind of made agreement with the fact that I wasn't smart because I didn't excel in our modern education system. And then I didn't have any athletic skill at all whatsoever. Those are the things when you're young that people really place their identity in. And my brother, he was like straight A student, star athlete, growing up, like good at kind of everything. And he still is. I love my brother. He's just so wonderful. He's my greatest role model in my life. And it's not his fault that he was good at things. He just was. And I wasn't. And that's okay. But when you're a kid, it doesn't feel okay. And so going into middle school, this kind of just got worse. 8th grade comes around and I began to battle extreme clinical depression. And as a spiritual person today, my personal beliefs, I don't identify, and I don't believe people should identify, with terms of mental illness or clinical illness, because I don't believe that we should make agreement with that being who we are, but more so that we have symptoms of so and so. And so for me, I had very, very intense symptoms of clinical depression and got diagnosed with clinical depression and experienced severe suicidal thoughts on a regular basis, severe anxiety. There were reasons in my life at the time where I began to pick up a self-harm as a coping mechanism for the pain that I was experiencing. And what that looked like was breaking pencil sharpeners, like all over my house, stealing pencil sharpeners from school to get the blades out, and cutting my wrists and my legs. Sorry, I'm just reflecting, like, it's not something I talk about all the time because there's so much that happens in my journey, like, every single day. So when I go back this far, it's honestly kind of strange to revisit. Prior to this, I was already starting to get bullied. So this was kind of like more casual bullying, normal middle school bullying. I don't think any kind of bullying is okay, but, I'm already feeling awkward. I already feel a little bit weird about myself. And I have a big Italian nose. I still do, but when I was in middle school, I had not grown into my face yet. And I wouldn't say I was exactly the beauty standard either. Like I said, I was a little bit awkward looking. And so my nose was much more prominent, of a feature. And now I'm like totally fine with that piece of my face now. But growing up, I hated my nose. Like I literally could not sit in class. I would sit in class like this when someone was next to me because I couldn't bear the thought of them looking at my nose from the side. I had guys make fun of my nose, call me Toucan Sam, call me Junos, different things. And I was also pigeon-toed. I was born with my feet inverted like this. I had to wear a bar when I was a little girl to go to sleep to try to straighten my hips out. And so I walked pigeon-toed. And I remember like just getting bullied by girls, by guys that would make fun of how I walked, imitate me in the hallways. And it just got really, really bad. So then there was a situation that really pushed me over the edge. Now the whole school was talking about me for something that did not even actually happen. And I remember coming to school and realizing this when I walked into the lunchroom, that everyone was turning and looking at me. And I was alone and I was up eating lunch in the school bathroom stall. And this became kind of a habit, me going into the stalls to cut myself and going into the principal's office to eat and just going to the nurse all the time to try to get out of school and fighting with my parents, literally physically fighting my parents every day to try to avoid being taken to school because of how much I was suffering. And so I was cutting, I was dealing with the bullying, and then you get more bullying for the cutting because, in middle school, everyone thinks you're doing it for attention. To be honest, there probably was a piece of me that was doing it for attention. I think I just wanted someone to care about me. Like, I was 12, I was so lost, I was so hurt, there was a piece of me that wanted someone to ask if I was okay. So I didn't necessarily go out of my way to hide, my cuts because I was like, well, I just want someone to know that I'm suffering enough to ask if I'm okay. Or maybe if they know that I'm hurting myself, then they'll stop hurting me. And, it just went the complete opposite of that. So everything got worse and I ended up getting admitted overnight to a mental hospital. I remember having to strip completely naked in front of a stranger to get checked for blades and cuts. I mean, honestly, it was just like incredibly traumatic. And so, growing up, I never really knew who I was. Never felt permission to be kind of who I was. And then in middle school, it was really, really drilled into me that it was very unsafe to be who I was. So flash forward, it's now high school, and I am refusing to go to the high school of the middle school that this happened at. And my mom put me in the drawing for a magnet school in the area where like a bunch of kids from different counties could have the opportunity to go to this school. Ended up enrolling and getting in. This is when everything drastically changed. So, picture this. I'm in middle school. I have all of this trauma. I've never had permission to be who I was. I've never felt safe to be who I was. I've been shamed for my appearance. I don't know who I am. When a child feels like that, whether it be the level or gravity that I felt it, or something subconscious that happened to you as a child that removed your permission in your mind to be who you were behind closed doors, or maybe it's just the pressure of society and culture to be something else or look like something else or attain something else, there is a time in each of our lives where we do begin to put a mask on our face. And for me, this is where I really began to build that mask. So I go from middle school to high school. I had just got my braces off. My body was developing and maturing, and I made the decision to dye my hair blonde. I wanted to feel beautiful. I had an opportunity to completely reinvent who I wanted to be. This was a fresh start for me. And so because it wasn't safe to be me, the girls who made my life hell in middle school, to me, it was the safe thing to do would be to become something maybe more like them because they were really liked. And I just want to preface this by saying I have no beef with any girls from middle school.
Sorry for the abrupt intermission. My camera died. Absolutely do not have any bitterness or resentment or anger towards the people in this story at all. And that goes for the pieces that I'm about to share about high school as well. And this goes again, like for the guys that I describe in the next part of the testimony. They had no idea what was going on either. They were also really young. They probably don't even remember these things. And this world is really, really dark, and children are very, very brainwashed to think that these things are okay or normal. So yeah, going into high school, this was an opportunity to completely reinvent who I was. I could literally be anything that I wanted to be for the very first time in my life. And obviously, being myself was not only not enough, but worthy of criticism. As my little brain is developing, these are the kind of thoughts that I'm making agreement with. I wasn't smart. I wasn't beautiful. I walked funny. I looked funny. I didn't belong. These were the kinds of thoughts that just continuously ruled my mind. So I go to high school, and appearance started to evolve very, very fast. All of a sudden, I got my braces off. I dyed my hair blonde. I grew boobs, and everything just did a 180 really, really fast. We see this with social media today. We all have the ability through social media to put out whatever image we want into the world, despite how contradictory that image may be to our true self behind closed doors. We don't care. It's an opportunity to be whoever we want, to show whoever we want, to become whoever we want. And we even hyper-identify with these fake personalities and personas that we create in aesthetics and feeds and whatnot, because they feed us fake confidence and fake validation and reassurance, saying that, oh, I'm enough because I got these likes, these comments, etc. And it's fuel to these ugly, ugly things that take root inside of us as we develop these personas or masks. And that is how my imposter was created. The blonde hair, tanning bed, the push-up bras. The way I know how to put it is that I went from hyper-criticism to hyper-praise. And it was a very specific area that I was being praised for, obviously, my appearance. And so for the first time in my life, literally in my life, I was receiving not only validation, but praise. And like I previously stated, I'd never really been praised for anything. I'd never really been good at anything. Sports, school, obviously, even just my appearance in itself was criticized my whole life. So this was the first time I had ever felt not only enough, but validated. And this is kind of like a really disgusting pattern that occurs in high school. The ways that I was specifically receiving was from upperclassmen boys. And we see this today as just a really, really horrific pattern that's just kind of like swamped our generation with perversion, where upperclassmen boys are constantly prying on freshman girls. And I don't even want to blame the boys because they're also young. They're so manipulated by culture and brainwashed by pornography and what's normalized in culture. Not blame these boys at all. I don't even blame the guys who did this to me. They were also young and also brainwashed. Culture tells us this stuff is normal, and the hypersexualization that is literally breeding children today is creating a culture of perversion. And there's a whole spiritual side of this that I'm just not going to get into. I was 14, 15 years old, this young girl, and all these guys are 17, 18 are praising me for my appearance and parts of my body, things I never received validation for. And not to mention, like, my appearance at this point wasn't necessarily what I actually looked like. Like, I began to create my appearance based on what I believed was attractive. I was going to become something that my young mind believed was not only acceptable, but worthy of validation or worthy of love. And I saw that in these popular girls, the ones that bullied me. And so as I went into high school, I began to take on that same image. I began to create that same image of what hurt me to protect myself. It became like a shield. And this looks different for everyone, the shields and the masks that we put on or create to protect ourselves from repeating different patterns of behaviors or trauma that we received in our childhood. These are things we do subconsciously. For me, this only became conscious over the past 2 years. But before that, I didn't even realize I had done this. In fact, most of us aren't really aware of our imposters. They're just so tied to who we are at this point that we just have a lot of bad behaviors and struggle with symptoms. And it's not until we go through that inner child healing or begin to dive into the root cause of why we're suffering, why we don't know how to be our self-strong people, why we suffer so badly with people pleasing. That is when we begin to say, oh, this happened to me when I was a kid. Wait, can we pinpoint the imposter that we've attached to our face that is not who we are, but we've created in order to please other people? And that is what happened to me. It just took a really, really dark manifestation through hypersexuality and perversion. So with that being said, this really, really took a dark turn when I was about 14 going into high school. And I was still so awkward, so innocent. Outside the self-harm, I wasn't exposed to anything sexual in the physical realm. I wasn't exposed to drugs or alcohol in any capacity yet. And I had a sleepover, or what I thought was just going to be like a fun little sleepover with these girls. Now, they were a little bit older than me, and they had definitely been exposed to a lot more than me. For the first time I hung out with them, we met up with an older group of guys, which at the time when you're like going into high school, I'm literally a little girl. I'm so nervous, but like this is an opportunity to feel like really cool, meeting up with these guys. And they took us to a playground. And the boys started doing cocaine. And I had never seen anything like that in my entire life. I don't even think I'd ever seen weed before. So it gets a little bit later into the night. Guys that we were with tell the girls that I was with that they were not going to give us a ride home, and they were going to leave us at the park that they took us to if one of us did not perform sexual acts on them. And I was so scared. This was just very overwhelming situation for me. And I remember just being very quiet and sheltered. And at this time, I'd never done anything like this. One of the guys, the more attractive guy that was in the group, that obviously, you know, you're 14 years old and there's this 18-year-old guy. So remember, he specifically said that he wanted me to do this. And this was one of, I would say that this moment was kind of the entry point into like a really dark spiral of identity and confusion. And to just keep it real, I actually had this memory completely blocked until I started to do a lot of inner healing with God. And this is something that was later revealed to me over time by the Holy Spirit, of just kind of where this all started, as I did a lot of root cause healing. But yeah, so that happened. And I remember just the praise that I received for my appearance and things that were obviously done in a manipulative manner towards a young girl in a vulnerable position to get them to do something like that. I had no idea what I was doing, and I remember thinking, okay, I guess this is just a normal part of growing up. I guess this is just a normal part of growing up. And I guess this is cool. I guess this is how you become cool. And that was just kind of like the first thing that happened. And now I'm 15 and I have my first crush at school, and the guy's like 3 years older than me. And I just think he's so cute, and he starts to take interest in me for obviously very wrong reasons. And at this time, it's like, okay, well, I guess the way we get boys to like us is by having sex with them. So, you know, me at 15 years old, I lost my virginity to this boy who did not care about me, did not value me, did not value my body. It's so sad. And I know, like, in culture today, this isn't necessarily like a big deal. And it's just so heartbreaking how casual sex and hookup culture and pornography and just hypersexualization of children and culture and media and music has just swamped our generation. I don't even believe it's our generation. It's just the world that we live in. It's just so dark. And a lot of people may not like think this is that crazy, because they may have a similar story, like, oh, I also lost my virginity at 15, but to someone who didn't care about me, but that, guys, like, shouldn't be normal. You know, I don't think that we should have to be a certain religion or have a certain spiritual perspective to see that sex is designed to be something really sacred. I mean, you and I are both the product of sex, right? Like, creation. If a man and a woman come together and they have sex, and that is what births another human being, there has to be something sacred about that process. So, yeah, it's just super heartbreaking to think about all of the young girls who are in high school or middle school and they feel that they have to show their body or pose themselves half naked or give their bodies away to boys who don't care about them, to feel validated, to feel enough. It's just really sad. So, you know, this just took like a really dark turn. Like, it started like that, but then after I lost my virginity, there was just like a shift in me. It was like, okay, this is normal. This is how you get a boy to like you. Like, I was so scared. Like, this was not a enjoyable experience in any way, and it never was. I began to watch pornography. I would send inappropriate pictures of myself to just like tons of guys all the time. And this is so sad that literally this is the most relatable story. Like, this is so sad that the things that I'm saying, half of the people watching this video would be like, okay. Like, I know there's a percentage of people watching this that would be like, but then there's also like a percentage of people watching this that literally don't see anything wrong with that. Like, guys, this isn't normal. It's not fucking normal. I'm I'm sorry for my language, it just isn't. It's so heartbreaking. And, I began to love this identity. I began to make so much agreement with this person. So much agreement with this person. It was like, I began to love being sexual. I even called myself a slut on several occasions. I loved building a persona on Instagram centered around my body and, how sexy I looked, even though I was freaking 16, 17 years old. And the reason why is because I literally was traumatized, inside of that girl, that slut, inside of every slut that you see is a traumatized little girl who doesn't know who she is, who feels like she has to do these things to receive validation. And in culture today, we make up all these lies to ourselves and to the world to make ourselves feel better. It's slut shaming, with these stupid terms of sex is empowering for women, hookup culture is empowering for women. I thought that if I could hook up with the hottest guy or the guy with the most status, that made me so cool. And I didn't think I would say things like, oh, they're not using me, I'm using them. That was just such a lie. It wasn't even a lie to other people. It was a lie to myself. I genuinely believed these things, guys. I genuinely believed these horrible truths. It was because I was so lost. I never received praise for anything in my life. I never felt like I was enough. And for the first time in my life, the first time I'm receiving not only validation but praise, it's for something like this. So I began to just really identify with this person. And it wasn't just the sexual side of things, that's just another layer, but as you create a persona, obviously your physical appearance is a huge part of that. I remember I could not look at myself without makeup. I literally could not look at myself without makeup. I come out of middle school, I go into high school, I put makeup on for the first time. Okay. And this is when I started to receive praise for my appearance, when I put makeup on and I changed my hair. And so then I became so attached to those things that I was terrified if anyone saw what was underneath those things that I would have to face what I had experienced in middle school again, or I would have to face the version of myself that was underneath those things. So it wasn't even like I was just doing them for other people. Even when I was alone, I had to be caked in makeup. Even when I was alone, I needed hair extensions. And it was because I personally didn't even want to see what I looked like underneath all of it. I was terrified of my own real appearance at such a young age. I remember spending hours in the morning, caking my face. And I think I saved every single penny to spend money on hair extensions. If I did not look like a Barbie doll every single day of...
Okay, this is officially the most ridiculous video ever that I have done. 3 location changes in the middle of one story. Camera died again, ended up taking a road trip across the country, and now I am in Kansas. And so all of that happened. You had all of those revelations about who you were, when and how and why, and how did you get to this point? Okay, so at this time, my parents, we were kind of trying out different non-denominational churches. And we were in that church that I had went to middle school at, to be talking about a mission trip to Honduras. And I, being who I was at this time, was like, what a great opportunity to travel, to take pictures, just being really transparent about where my head was at when I initially went on that trip. Now, God was absolutely wrecked me there. That's where he met me. But my intention was never to go to necessarily help people or to find God by any means. And just throughout the trip, I began to kind of just shed that mask that I put on every single day, being around the people. It's one thing when you grow up and your parents tell you eat your food, there's kids starving in another country. And then there's another thing when you're in the foreign country, you're not only witnessing it with your eyes, but then you're also making deep connections, in discipleship with these people, walking these children through dirt floor homes at night. It really, really impacts you. And for me, being the spoiled, entitled brat that I had become, this was exactly what I needed to see, to have just the reality check of like, life isn't about what you think that it's about, Kayla. Last day that I really had my God moment. And that last night, I was at the church that we had just helped build, and the sermon wasn't even in English. I mean, by the end of the trip, I was makeupless, hair extensions out, big t-shirt on, manual labor activated. I mean, I was who I am now, but that was the first glimpse of it. I was forced to take my mask off. So when I did, it was like God was revealing to me these layers underneath of who I was. That last day, an altar call, and I just went face down at the altar, and I just said, Jesus, I don't know you, but I want to, and I want to give my life to you today. So I gave my life to Jesus in Honduras. But as the Bible talks about in Matthew, the parables of the soil, I did not have good soil. So when the seeds that were planted in my life during this season fell on top of this soil, they sprouted up really fast, but they also died really easily because I had no foundation. And so this did happen. The seeds were there, but because my soil wasn't rooted, because I didn't have just like a real relationship with God or anything in my life guiding me in that direction at home, as soon as I got home, mask went right back on. I remember literally getting into first period, being so excited to tell my friends how much my life had changed on my mission. And I just had this radical revelation of my identity. And then it was like I got home and it was just immediately met with acceptance again. The enemy just like immediately brought me right back to where I was. I slowly began to build a relationship with God from there, and I always loved God, and I would like continue to go to parties and get drunk and be the girl who would like want to play worship music in the car on the way home or leave the social gathering to go pray. Like, anytime I would get too high, I'd be like on the floor with like Oceans by Hillsong United in my ear. I always like knew it was Jesus, but I just didn't have the foundation. I didn't have the foundation to keep the mask off. Years go by, and now I'm just kind of naturally evolving as one does as they go from 16 to 23 years old. Almost like because my behaviors weren't the way that they were when I was a teenager, like my external behaviors, I had convinced myself that I had somehow changed so much and healed so much. Because I'm like, well, I'm not drinking, partying, smoking, and having sex with random boys. Somehow I had healed. But a lot of times our behaviors aren't actually necessarily the greatest reflection of how much we have healed. It's not always about our external, but a lot of times the places deeply embedded within us that we don't really see with the naked eye that can point to our deepest wounds. And for me, I thought, okay, because you don't do these things anymore, you've healed. So I could kind of take the time to sit here and recap every single year of my life with you, but this is just absolutely not the point of the video. The point of the video is how I went from that to where I am now. In the beginning of 2023, my walk with God took a greater depth than I could have ever imagined. In the Bible, it talks about being born again. And I think a lot of Christianity uses that term really loosely without having any idea what that phrase means. In order for something to become born again, the old creation must die. We believe that because we dip someone in a pool of water or they say a prayer of salvation that somehow they become born again. But I think that being born again requires a whole new identity. And beyond that, it is being born again by the Spirit. And I'm not going to get too deep into the spiritual side of things, but I want to be a little bit honest about my perspective and why I was so radically transformed. Obviously, I'd been baptized and walked with God and went through conventional Christianity and then even went into the New Age. And, that's a story for another time. So I had seen all these different sides, but there was nothing that was substantial enough in what I was learning to kill that old version of myself, to kill that imposter, to literally put that imposter that I'd created in the dirt. It was not until August of 2023, last year, even in my entire walk with God, my walk as a healer, my walk as a yoga instructor, everything that I was doing, I was helping people, I was helping myself, I had healed in a lot of ways, I had evolved mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, in ways that people naturally do as they grow up. But it was not until August of 2023, last year, that I was actually able to identify my imposter. So all the time in between 16, and that story of how that came about, all the way until last year, I still did not realize my mask existed. I say that to say that 90% of the people watching this video, you probably don't know your mask exists. And if you do, you may not know how it got there. And as you're listening to my story, my hope is that you'll be able to identify pieces of your imposter and find the courage to kind of go back and ask yourself, what wound was created when I was a little boy or a little girl that told me that I have to put this on my face? And sometimes it doesn't look as extreme as my situation, but people pleasing, I mean, all these things are signs of imposter. Anytime you are doing something, living your life for applause, living your life for validation, living your life for the approval of man, if any of that exists to you, which is, unless you're an infant, that's probably the case, that people pleasing is a product of an imposter. Having to feel like you have to be something that you're not is a product of putting a mask on. But 2023, I remember sitting with my friend Amia, got into bed, and I looked at her and I was like, my skin was breaking out at the time. And I said, I'm so sorry that I don't have makeup on. First of all, what? But I literally said, I'm so sorry that I'm not wearing makeup. And she looked at me and she said, did you just apologize for not wearing makeup? And I said, yeah, like, I don't want you to have to, like, look at my face. I cannot even believe. This is last year. That wound was that deep. And I didn't know it existed because I just woke up every day and I put my face on. And I was confident. I was confident because I didn't have to be me. I was confident because I could be whoever I wanted. I was confident because I could take a sexy picture of myself and post on Instagram and receive validation that I needed to sustain me. To keep my mask on. But underneath it, it was literally just, there was this suffering little girl who had no idea who she was, who didn't believe she was beautiful, who didn't believe that she was enough, who had literally apologized for her own face. That is so weird. That is so weird. That is so sad. Man, from that point forward, I began to realize that something was seriously wrong. When you enter into union with the Holy Spirit and understanding what that means, which was what happened in my journey, there is a pretty little process called sanctification. And I think for the first part of my journey with God, I literally didn't believe I needed any. I don't even think I believed that sin existed, or at least it was subjective to others, but not me. Like, I was a good person. I did the right things, was celibate, and I didn't drink, and I didn't smoke anymore. And I gave up all the things when I started walking with God. I was living this perfect, pure lifestyle. My heart was so ugly, so unhealed, so unclean. And God literally looked at me in the face and he said, I don't care about any of that. I'm not here for sacrifices. Old Testament literally talks about before Jesus died, the way people posed themselves to God was by laying down physical things, laying down physical sacrifices. And that defeats the whole purpose of why Jesus died. I mean, he wants to be one with, yes, as you grow in your relationship with God, you'll begin to realize what pieces of your external life aren't reflective of who you are, but it's not like you accept Jesus and he's like, I need you to stop smoking, stop drinking. That would be so weird. Like, you don't get into the shower dirty. You get into the shower clean, and the water, as it washes over you, it naturally and organically cleans you. And that is what he wanted to do. He wanted a relationship with me. And I laid all these things down and I became self-righteous. I became entitled. I think one of the greatest lies that the enemy has ever sold us is that God wants to control us, when in reality, he's the one who has us in control. For so long, I didn't want to die to myself because I thought that God wanted to control me. And that was why, I refrained from having a relationship with Jesus for so long. I don't want to be controlled. And as I began to grow deeper in this journey with the Holy Spirit and in my personal relationships and encounters with the Holy Spirit, so clear and so evident to me that that is the lie. He never wants to control you. He literally just wants to reveal to you the parts of you that aren't actually you so you can be free. What you're actually in slavery to is patterns and the behaviors of this world. It says in Romans 12:2, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In my personal relationship with Yeshua, I have been blessed to know him by the Spirit. It doesn't exactly look like a conventional journey of Christianity. And it wasn't until I was able to live this mystical life of union with God where he was able to directly teach me and directly counsel me and directly lead me into a place of healing and directly lead me into a place where he could stand in front of me, hold a mirror and point like this and say, This is not who you are. It wasn't, Kayla, I need you to stop wearing makeup. Kayla, I need you to cut the blonde out of your hair. He wasn't telling me I had to do those things. He was simply holding a mirror in front of me, and I was looking into it. And as I was looking more at him and becoming more like him, I was looking at myself in the mirror and saying, who is this person? Who is this person that I have created? Because now that I know Jesus and now that I'm bearing witness to who he is inside of me, I look at myself in the mirror and I don't recognize the person that's standing in front of me. And so over the past year, specifically from the months of November to January, I went into an isolation period with God where I completely cut myself off from everything. During this time, I stopped wearing makeup I had the worst skin I'd ever had in my life, and made the decision to stop wearing makeup, because I knew that I needed to heal. And I knew that the only way that I could heal the wound and completely obliterate this imposter was to strip myself of the mask. This was terrifying. I didn't even want to go outside with no makeup, let alone go to work, meet new people, with no makeup, the worst skin of my life, not to mention it's winter, I'm pale as shit, probably gonna take out the shit, but I'm pale, this was not the Kayla that not only people were used to seeing, but I was used to seeing. And I just began to realize too, I don't even know what I look like. So, wintertime, makeup comes off, I cut the blonde out of my hair, literally chopped it off. So obviously a great external work done on me, but there is no words, for the internal work was done on me at this time. There was weeks during that time where I was just with God. This time of isolation, I went into a secret place with the Holy Spirit for 3 months, allowing him to show me who I truly was. Not change anything about me that wasn't who I was. So I did a lot of healing, and I sat there, and day after day, there was fasting, and you don't have to do all this, but I'm just letting you guys know authentically how I got to this point. On a day-to-day basis, I would go into meditation and be counseled by the Spirit, with visions and dreams every single night, with no really human contact outside of work life. This radically changes the human. You can only imagine. Especially compared and in contrast to the girl that I used to be. So I went into this hibernation mode in the winter. Metamorphosis, this is a huge part of that process. I went into my cocoon. The only way that I could go from the previous creation that needs to be born again, I had to die first. And so in that death, it wasn't a death of I died. It was a shedding of my old skin. Like a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. And I thought I was this butterfly this whole time because I had given my life to Yeshua, but I hadn't healed. And the becoming born again didn't have as much to do with my behavior as it had to do with my identity. And so he wanted to show me who I was. And it was only in that new identity that I could become the butterfly. And now I am here today to move back into social media, to move back into my platform, but this time as who I really am. And that is why I had to take myself offline for so long, while I was in this process, because there was so much conviction in me. How can I continue to give these pieces of myself to the world that aren't who I am? How could I produce anything that's performative? How could I heal someone when I have yet to heal those same pieces in myself? And so I come to you now, proud of my journey, so proud of who I've become, but it was all him. If you take anything away from this story, if I can go from that to this, the purpose of my life is to be not only a reflection, but to be an invitation, for what he wants to do in you. Because this journey is so far from subjective to me. You have an imposter, you have a mask, and you have a story that needs to be told. You have roots that need to be unraveled and uprooted. So I don't come on here to share my story for you to learn more about who I am, but to maybe shine a light on a piece of who you truly are that you've forgotten about or suppressed or believed that you as a little girl or a little boy wasn't safe to embody or to feel or to believe, that you were too much, that you were not enough. Who you truly are deserves to be seen. Who you truly are is what the world needs. It is only you. I'm here today to tell you that the real you deserves to be seen. Allow my testimony to be an invitation for you to begin questioning your imposter, stripping your mask off, knowing that if he can do this in me, he can do it in anyone. And on top of that, you are unbelievably loved by God, no matter what you believe in. The same source that created all of this created you. The same source that created the most beautiful thing you've ever seen with your human eyes created you. Not just created you, but knit you together piece by piece, wove you together intentionally to be something unique that only you have, that only you can offer to the world. So, a lot more to say, but I'm going to leave it at that today. So thank you for watching my testimony, and I will see you soon.